London's Camberwell Road and the local Methodist church. Larger than most, but then uniquely it boasts its own theatre, gym and other facilities. This roof used to be a sports field. All of this was the labour of one man, the minister here for 50 years, Jimmy Butterworth. Butterworth called his creation Clubland, and it was formed by sheer willpower and force of personality.
He was such a small man, but he had this dynamism about him that people just looked at him and knew that he was a governor in every sense. And for that they respected him, of course.
He seemed such a pathetic figure, and people softened to him. But very soon, very quickly, they realized that he had great ambitions and great dedication.
Well, I'd say he was a groundbreaker, a rebel. He was a magician. He was a clown at times. He was a miracle worker at times.
Jimmy was born in a Lancashire moorland cottage. His early years were marked with hardship and trauma.
From the age of 12, he was working in the cotton mills. His mother had been widowed. His father sadly had committed suicide about that time, about the age of 12, I think.
It was 12, yeah.
And left our grandmother, Dad's mother, with 5 children to bring up. And Dad being the eldest, he went to work.
Jimmy left the cotton mills to enlist in the Lancashire Fusiliers. During the First World War, he saw 2 years active service.
While he was in the trenches, he met people who were very interested in what were then termed boys' clubs rather than youth clubs. It tended to be boys' clubs that the emphasis was on. And when he came back, he went to Didsbury Theological College to become a minister, which was obviously some kind of boyhood ambition. But by this time, mixed with it was this urge to do social work.
As a Methodist minister, Jimmy chose his first placement in the Walworth Road, which allowed him to combine his ministry with his interest in social work.
He felt that the church as it was quite unsuitable for the young people. You know, it was something that was foreign to the young folk of this area. And he had this vision of a club and a church combined, where the young people could have a complete environment of the spiritual side and the physical side.
Well, you'd come in fear, not fear and trembling, but a bit apprehensive, because it was all new. There's nothing else to do around. And I'd be given a locker to put my cap in or whatever I was wearing at the time, and I'd be taken around and play ping pong, or try to play ping pong as it was called then, get a chance on the billiards, and gradually involved in the activities of the place.
But Clubland required more than just pious social work. It needed hard cash. Jimmy became adept at getting to know the kind of people who could help him. He was the original networker.
If there wasn't a home match at Arsenal or Chelsea, he would choose a match to go and see, and not content with just going through the turnstiles, he would just arrive at the director's box and he'd mention somebody who he'd met in a boardroom somewhere else and say, he's expecting me, or I'm sure he'd like to see me, and before you knew it, you'd be sipping a drink in the boardroom of some club you'd never been to in your life. In my case, feeling acutely embarrassed. In his case, reveling in it. And making more contacts for another such occasion in the future, or for a visit to the club.
In return for a donation, he offered a name in stone in the wall of Clubland. For many whose names are no longer in lights, they're still remembered in Clubland.
Of course, it had been a hard struggle from 1922 to 1939. Financial-wise, to get people interested to support this idea. And he, with his persuasive manner, was able to, get his friends to give him the support that he had.
By 1939, Jimmy's network had reached the top. Queen Mary herself was persuaded to visit Southwark to open the completed buildings. But this was a bad time to be opening buildings in London, and shortly afterwards, a large part of Clubland was destroyed in the Blitz. The work of 20 years was shattered in seconds.
After the initial bitter disappointment, he was determined that it should be rebuilt, and quite a number of services were held in the shell of the destroyed church, and these were services of rededication.
The lack of a building didn't stop Clubland's activities. Butterworth took his Londoners on their annual trip to Guernsey. His enjoyment was enhanced by the presence of a young helper, Anna Costain, who became his wife. The austerity of the post-war years in Britain meant that Jimmy started to look west for funds to rebuild Clubland.
Somebody suggested that maybe the money would be easier in America. A lot more wealthy people, and the sort of work that Dad was doing here would appeal to them.
He went across by boat, and he met people on the boat who passed him from one to the other, right across the States and back again, lecturing all the way.
It was on one of these trips that a legendary encounter established his special relationship with Bob Hope.
Nobody really knows quite how they met, but I suspect that he met him through somebody else, was perhaps taken on a visit to the studios and introduced to him. The story is that Bob Hope spotted him from a crowd and said, I'd like to talk to that little minister there. But somewhere between the two, the truth lies. Anyway, he managed to bump into Bob Hope and found enough time, got enough of his ear to tell him his story, and Bob Hope was very taken with it. Invited him back to watch him filming some more, promised to come to London and visit the club and put on a charity performance while he was here. My father didn't believe him. He always said he didn't believe him, but true to his word, about 9 months later, he notified him that he was coming to London Palladium for a few nights. The whole proceeds were given to Clubland, and while he was here, he made the first of his several visits to the club. I don't think he found much common ground with Bob Hope at a personal level at all.
Dad would not necessarily have been friendly with these people if it hadn't been for the club.
Well, with one person only thinking of the youth club he's raising money for, and the other one only thinking of the next joke he can squeeze out of it, it would be a rather strained conversation.
An appearance on This Is Your Life marked public recognition of Butterworth's achievements, but the structure and discipline that had once been the strength of Clubland was now out of fashion. Instead, in a more liberal society, a new generation was supported by the welfare state and entertained by television.
A lot of the new thinking in youth work was to open premises up and let adolescents come in and just sit around, smoke, drink Coca-Cola, play table tennis if they wanted to, dance a bit, come in and out as they pleased, and not be required to be members and sign up and belong. He didn't go for any of that. He didn't really want to change.
But I think he felt tremendous feeling of elation with when things were successful, when it was good, and that's why, probably in contrast, he felt so depressed and sad when it was no longer there. That's what gave him his reason to live, I think, was the success of his clubs.
Well, he never really showed disappointment.
No.
You felt underneath he was disappointed because the numbers, of course, were low, and so many families went away and didn't come back again.
Jimmy retired from Clubland in 1974 with his health in decline. 18 months later, he passed away.
Looking back on my life, I tie everything down to any success I might have achieved to Clubland, and in particular to Jimmy Butterworth. He took us all in. He gave us a wonderful education, really. He taught us the social graces and a real finishing school.
He thought anybody could achieve anything, and they deserved the chance to do so. And I think that is an attitude, that's a cry a lot of people have taken up in modern education and in modern social work. I'd say that was his legacy.
The Methodist Church in Walworth Road still has a thriving congregation, and it's hoped that a planned redevelopment will provide tomorrow's needs for the community.